Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler, and I will be presenting the West Nile fever, which is an arthropod-borne virus. The learning objectives will go through an overview, some disease factors, and then we'll close it off with a historical background, some prevention, and some future research. So the formal name is the West Nile virus, common names West Nile fever, West Nile virus infection. In severe forms, which is neurological diseases, so very rare, but it is called the West Nile encephalitis or West Nile meningitis. This is the primary vector, the mosquito. The infectious agent, it's a member of the Flaviviridae family, which is also flavivirus. There are three genera in this. The other two are hepatitis or Hep C virus, which is hepatitis C, and then pestivirus, which is like hoofed animals, affecting hoofed animals. For this family, though, it is also includes other human pathogens such as dengue, yellow fever, and Japanese encephalitis virus. The scientific name is Orthoflavivirus nilens, and this is because it infects vertebrates and they're transmitted via arthropods. Characteristics, you see the single-stranded positive sense RNA genome, which is encapsulated within that icosahedral particle in the form of a nucleocapsid, and then is surrounded by a lipid bilayer, which is embedded with these envelope proteins. Phylogenetic tree, so just focusing on lineage 1 and lineage 2 because they're the most predominant and most pathogenic and associated with humans. You can see West Nile virus, WNV, and then the region that it's associated with and where the strains had traveled. So then zooming in on lineage 1, you can see that. So in 1999, that's when it was first introduced to the United States in New York. The primary vector was a crow, and so it came from Israel. Some people think Tunisia, but based on this phylogenetic tree, it came from Israel. Notable strains. So lineage 1, that's predominant globally and subdivided into 3 clades, seen in the color orange on the map. That's clade A, which is strains in Europe, Africa, Middle East, and America. Clade B is seen in pink, and that is just Australia. And then clade C is seen in green, which is India. Then lineage 2, that's exclusive to Africa and Madagascar, but more research efforts are being put into it because there was a outbreak of lineage 2 in some parts of Russia. So now it's making its way. Pathogenesis, a lot of words. If you focus on the diagram right here, you got the flavivirus entering the skin Langerhans dendritic cells via receptor-mediated endocytosis. And then once they enter into the endosome, that's where the primary maturation happens, and the viral E protein drives the membrane fusion between that viral envelope and endosome membrane, and the nucleocapsid is released. Then that flaviovirus will go into the endoplasmic reticulum, where replication will occur, RNA synthesis, and then finally viron assembly, which will then transfer to the Golgi apparatus, where viron maturation will occur, and then after this final maturation, it is then released via exocytosis. Pathology, so preferentially the virus wants to attack the central nervous system. However, that is very rare for humans. It is seen mostly in birds because it can cause like paralysis or just loss of muscle movement. But for humans, it's very rare. So for the early phase, it attacks or enters the tissues from the mosquito's saliva and multiplies in the skin. Viremia, that's where it enters into the bloodstream, and this is where it can enter into the central nervous system via the blood-brain barrier, which not much research has actually shown the mechanism of how that happens, which I'll get into later. The visceral organ dissemination phase is most common, where it attacks the regional lymph nodes and spleen. The transmission, it's primarily transmitted by mosquitoes of the female Culex species. In some cases, it's seen that ticks also carry the virus, but that's very rare. Um, so then there's a cycle within the cycle where mosquitoes become infected when they feed on infected birds, and or not vice versa, but yeah, so a mosquito will go infect a bird, and then another mosquito will feed on that bird and then contract the virus. Then it's going to infect people and horses who are dead end hosts. I haven't seen much on dogs, but based on that picture, I guess they're associated. Um, but yeah, they're dead end hosts. So once a mosquito infects someone, another mosquito can't contract that virus by feeding on a human. Other rare routes of infection include blood transfusions, organ transplants, breastfeeding, and through the placenta. Organ transplants, those are the most common form of becoming a neuroinvasive disease. Minor symptoms, these usually last anywhere from like 3 to 6 days, maybe like a couple weeks if you're unlucky. The incubation period is 2 to 14 days. Majority are asymptomatic, like 80% are asymptomatic, so it's not really a high worry. The fever, it's named the West Nile fever. You get headaches, myalgia, that's muscle soreness, muscle aches, pains, back pain, anorexia, loss of appetite, maculopapular rash, that's seen at the top. That it's not specific to this virus, so you can't use it as a direct diagnosis, but if it shows up, it's definitely a sign. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and then pharyngitis, which is sore throat, seen on the bottom image. Major symptoms, these can last anywhere from 3 to 6 months, or in terrible cases, they're permanent damage. They cause permanent damage. You don't have to be worried about it because it only occurs in 1 in every 150 to 250 people infected. Encephalitis, it's the inflammation of the brain. So you have fever, a headache, or an altered mental state. Meningoencephalitis is the inflammation of the meninges, so it'll cause this fever, a headache as well, but specifically neck stiffness. Fatality rate around 10%. It's pretty high, so you don't want to contract this neuroinvasive disease. Post-infection, these are like the permanent symptoms that can last a whole lifetime. These are like persistent memory issues, fatigue, balance problems. And then looking at the diagram on the right, based on the article, the X-ray shown on F, that shows the degradation of the blood-brain barrier and a ton of inflammation, which are very high signs that encephalitis has occurred. Risk factors, good old Bernie here. Old age, hematological malignancies, it's cancerous cells. So if you had cancer, have cancer, you got a higher risk for this neuroinvasive disease. Infection from the organ transplant, as I talked about earlier, that could lead to neuroinvasive disease. And then some people are just prone genetically to contract a neuroinvasive disease easier than others. Immune response, I'm not going to get into it fully here, but we got type 1 interferons, neutrophils and natural killer cells for the innate. And then we got CD4+, CD8+, regulatory T cells and B cells for the adaptive. And then looking at this diagram, we got neutrophils. They serve as like reservoirs at first, but then later they then serve as to help the immune response by secreting cytokines and chemokines. You got the degranulation by those natural killer cells. You got the secretion of the immunoglobulin antibodies by B cells. And then the control of inflammation from those T regulatory cells. Incidence and prevalence. United States, so in 2024, there were a total of 1,353 cases, and 967 were neuroinvasive. 49 states reported human cases. I guess the only place that didn't was Oregon. The rest of the world, it was hard to find numbers and statistics. However, it was shown that 19 European countries reported human cases of the West Nile virus, and it's definitely a global epidemic. Also, Texas has the highest rate in the United States, so not to alarm anybody, but yeah, wear some bug spray. Uganda, it was first discovered there in the West Nile province, which is the northwest region of Uganda, hence the name West Nile. It was first recognized as an epidemic in a very small country or small town in Haifa, Israel, where 123 people were infected out of 303. And I talked about this a little earlier, but in 1999, a West Nile virus circling in Israel and Tunisia was imported in New York. Within a 3-year period of that, the virus expanded all the way to the West Coast. And in 2002, the largest recorded epidemic of the neuroinvasive disease happened in the Western Hemisphere. So 48 states, 4,156 diagnosed cases, and 284 deaths. And that's a lot. Like, there were more neuroinvasive cases in 2002 than total cases in 2024. Prevention. There's currently no vaccine available for humans. They call it mosquito hygiene, which is just wearing insecticide or clothes that cover your skin or just avoiding going outside. Local governments and mosquito control districts monitor mosquito populations and spray larvicides or adulticides to reduce the number of larvae and adult mosquitoes. Right here, that's a truck with the spray. Some countries don't like the spraying the larvicides or adulticides because they think it affects their crops, so they're just willing to take that risk. Diagnosis and treatment. So serology, that is a blood test, the most common test, and that tests for the IgM antibody. The lumbar puncture is a spinal tap to test for cerebrospinal fluid, and then you got PCR for the viral genetics. Treatment is supportive, meaning that you just treat based on the symptoms shown. So in severe cases for neuroinvasive disease, you'll have to stay in the hospital, IV fluids, or you might be put on a ventilator. Research efforts, they're still investigating how the virus crosses that blood-brain barrier as seen on the left. They know the overall mechanism for the pathogenesis, but they just don't know how it crosses that blood-brain barrier. And if they could find that, then they can maybe create a vaccine that allows the hosts to not allow this virus to enter into the brain. Vaccine development, there's only a vaccine licensed and successful for horses that you can go buy. They haven't really tested on humans, but a lot of countries, they don't want to put the money into it because they don't think it's a high risk factor because 80% of people are asymptomatic. Future outlook, ongoing efforts to improve vector control, enhance disease surveillance, and promote community awareness. A focus on equity, so global initiatives to increase prioritizing cost-effective solutions for low-income regions to mitigate the disproportionate impact of the West Nile virus. And that's it. Stay away from mosquitoes, guys. Thank you. Oh, and I got some references. Okay, bye.